Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up. And thank you all for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. Today's film review is a subscriber request from Elizabeth Jameson with comedy horror Cabin in the Woods.
Sign says closed.
Yeah, we were looking to buy some gas.
We also wanted to get directions.
Yeah, we're looking for, what's it called?
Tillerman Road.
I've seen plenty come and go. Well, I've been here since the war.
In this film, we follow 5 young people into a cabin in the woods where they plan to spend a relaxing weekend. However, things quickly turn for the worse when they suddenly start to die one by one. It stars Chris Hemsworth, Fran Kranz, Kristen Connolly, Jesse Williams, and Anna Hutchison. This film has so much to offer in every way. If you're a horror film nerd, this film is going to be very satisfying. While it sort of makes fun of all the horror film tropes, it also pays homage to all the films that have used them. It's fun to point out which films the artifacts, creatures, and lines in the film reference. There are so many that it's likely impossible to catch them all in the first time watching it. This is a film that you're definitely gonna watch more than one time. There's no getting around it. I'll get into all the film references a little bit later, but first I'm gonna talk about the background for a bit. And if you're not a huge horror fan and it's something that you tend to shy away from, this might actually be a film that interests you. There is a lot of blood and guts, but there is so much comedy that it helps to break it up a bit, and it makes it a little bit more light and more fun instead of it being true gore. The film was written by Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon. This was Drew's directorial debut. He was also a writer with Joss on Buffy, Firefly, and Angel. He was also the writer of Cloverfield and produced Lost. Joss Whedon obviously created Buffy, Angel, Firefly, and Dolls, and he's also the writer-director of the Avenger films. The special effects makeup was done by Heather L. Anderson and David Leroy Anderson of AFX Studio. Heather played Nancy in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. They brought a huge team with them to make the 60-plus characters for this film. AFX Studio was founded in 1980 by David and his father Lance Anderson. Joss and Drew purposely made the opening scene confusing for audiences. They wanted people to think that they had walked into the wrong film. And I'll tell you, even though I watched this film years ago and fell in love with it, I still sometimes confuse it with Cabin Fever. I had to double check and make sure I was watching the right film because I definitely thought I was watching that one. And Cabin Fever is definitely heavily referenced in this film. Some of the inspiration for the script came from Drew's hometown. He grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where there were a lot of scientists and other folks working on nuclear bombs that could at any moment destroy the entire planet. And at the same time, they were living these routine and normal lives. Joss and Drew spent a lot of time on working on the structure of the script and really took some time to come up with what they really wanted the script to be. Once they came up with what they wanted, they locked themselves in a hotel room and wrote the entire script in just 3 days. They both had come off of bad films and they pushed themselves to crank something out quickly, and that was great. The film was shot in 2009 and was set to be released in 2010. However, MGM pushed back the release date in order to convert the film into 3D, but the filmmakers did not like this idea. In 2010, MGM ends up filing filing for bankruptcy, which halts the film's progress, leaving Joss and Drew feeling like they just wasted their time. MGM ends up putting up Red State and Cabin in the Woods up for sale in order to bring in some money and in an attempt to rebrand the 87-year-old media company. Lionsgate immediately jumps at the opportunity and buys the film. Lionsgate swooping in once again. It premiered in Austin at a surprise screening at the But Numathon in December 2011. After that, it screened at South by Southwest, also in Austin, in March of 2012. It was then released to the world later that year in September. The filmmakers thought that Lionsgate really understood the film and that it was the perfect home for it. They were glad that they got the film out exactly how they wanted, without any cuts and without it being in 3D. The film grossed over $70 million worldwide, with a budget of $30 million for production. And I would say that the delay in the release date was probably beneficial for Cabin in the Woods. While watching the dailies, Joss decided that he wanted to cast Chris Hemsworth as Thor for the 2012 film Avengers. He just needed to beef up a bit. Fran Kranz's character, Marty, is introduced with a collapsible coffee mug that doubles as a bong. The prop was actually a $5,000 prototype, and they were looking for somebody to start making it. And it looks like one guy did start to sell them, but his website says out of stock right now. Fran participated in extensive training on how to be a stoner. He had a 2-hour joint rolling lesson, along with the lesson on how to light and hit a bong. Production even made their own custom rolling papers called Smiling Buddha. Even though Fran went on to do many films after this, in 2012, he was also on Broadway in Death of a Salesman. So now let's talk about the references a little bit, and there are a lot, so I'm definitely not going to be able to touch on all of them. So the premise of this film is that the scenario going on in the woods needs to be played out in a very particular way in order to please the ancient gods. Because if the ancient gods aren't pleased, then the world will end. The ancient gods essentially represent audiences of horror film and critics. While the writing of this film might make fun of all the cliches that horror and thriller films use over and over again, it celebrates them at the same time. Right off the bat, we have 5 young people going into the cabin in the middle of the woods, just like Cabin Fever, Evil Dead, and some other ones. And these were direct influences for the film, along with Friday the 13th, Saw, 1984, and Resident Evil. When the group goes down into the cellar, we see a bunch of artifacts lying around. This is the point where they are supposed to choose how they die. And this is done by picking an artifact and either putting it on or using it to its full capability. This is what we see the suits or the government betting on, and it seems that this is a yearly event. Before anyone in the group can actually use the artifact that they've chosen to its fullest capability, Dana stops them by calling them over so that she can read the diary of Patience Buckner, who is a direct reference to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and zombies in general. Her missing arm is gone because her family of cannibals ate it. The entry date seen in this book is April 4th, the same setting as the novel 1984, and both passages are about being surveillanced with ill intentions. The RV is a direct reference to The Hills Have Eyes. I love The Hills Have Eyes. And this is one of the many things that will have you asking why. Why would they take an RV on a day trip to a cabin where they'll be sleeping? Even though you might find yourself asking why a lot, it's best just to totally immerse yourself in this world. You would think that with all of these why questions that there would be a prequel, which would have been really cool. There still can be, so let's go ahead and put it out there into the universe. Other obvious references are Werewolf, It, Pinhead, The Truman Show, Cube, Amityville Horror, and Dolls. dolls I haven't seen yet, but I cannot wait to watch it. In the control room, we see this same operation happening in other countries, which are also referencing other films. In Kyoto, that scene is referencing The Ring. In Buenos Aires, we have King Kong. In Stockholm, it's John Carpenter's The Thing. And in Madrid, Dracula is the reference. Even though IMDb doesn't label this as a comedy horror, it's definitely written to be funny. Some would even say that this plays better as a comedy than it does a horror film. You know how when you're watching a scary film, you're basically making fun of the characters for making poor decisions that lead to their imminent death. Well, this film does those things on purpose and even comments on them within the film, making it very meta. For instance, when Jules and Kurt are out in the woods, which was shot indoors by the way, there are pheromones that are released from the ground, making the atmosphere foggy and making them want sexy time. Like many other films where the atmosphere is usually foggy, there are no mosquitoes, no blankets, but it's the perfect atmosphere to get down in. Another example is when Dana's hand is shocked and she drops her weapon after killing one of the monsters, instead of keeping the weapon in case she ran into yet another monster. And then when it's suggested that they split up at the cabin and it's agreed upon, it's questioned by Marty. I wouldn't call this film a parody or a spoof, but rather a satirical love letter to all the films that came before it. Some other films that really do a good job of this are Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, Zombieland, and Shaun of the Dead. The pacing is fast and steady, which I like. People start dying much sooner than we're used to seeing in a horror film, but that's because we get this amazing third act, which takes it to a whole new level. The only thing that I didn't like about this film was the scene where we see the eagle fly into the invisible wall that surrounds the cabin where the group will be staying in. I feel like keeping that bit of information from us would have made Kurt's death more powerful. We already had enough information about the government and knew that they were watching them and probably somehow containing them. So when we see Kurt making this decision to make that jump, we already know what's about to happen. It was almost like a spoiler within the movie. Other than that, this was a wonderful film and an instant favorite. It easily gets 4.5 rainbow skulls, and as of today, April 2021, you can find it on Amazon. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and share it with a friend who you think might also like it. And if you'd like your film to be put in the monthly drawing for a subscriber request, go ahead and subscribe and put your film in the comment section. You can also email me at duray@rainbowfright.com. And I'll be back tomorrow with another scary story narration, and next week I'll be doing a film review on Slither. And if you want to join the Rainbow Fright Freight Train, go ahead and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. That way you'll get notified every Thursday and Friday when I upload more videos like this. All right, y'all. Peace.